You made a decision today that wasn't yours. You don't know which one. That's the point. Maybe you stayed quiet when you should have spoken. Maybe you didn't apply for something because you already knew the answer. Maybe you checked your phone to see if they'd replied. And when they hadn't, something in your chest tightened. You called it caution. You called it being realistic. You called it knowing your place. It wasn't any of those things. It was fear. And what I'm about to tell you is that the fear wasn't yours to begin with. Someone built it inside you. Carefully. Deliberately. And they are still collecting from it today. Fear is the most powerful behavioral control mechanism ever identified. More powerful than incentive. More powerful than reason. More powerful than love. In most documented circumstances, a person in the grip of genuine fear does not weigh options. They seek relief. And whoever controls the source of the relief controls the person seeking it. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is the documented operational logic of every system that has ever sought to manage human behavior at scale. Governments, religions, corporations, abusive relationships. The mechanism is identical across all of them. Introduce or amplify a fear. Position yourself as the source of protection from that fear. Collect the compliance, the money, the loyalty, or the silence that the frightened person will exchange for the feeling of safety. This is the protection racket, and you are almost certainly living inside at least one version of it right now. In 1908, an American advertising copywriter named James Young was hired by a deodorant company called Odorono to solve a problem. The product worked, nobody was buying it. The reason nobody was buying it was simple. Body odor was not, in 1908, considered a social problem. It was considered a fact of being a person. Nobody was afraid of it. Young's solution was not to improve the product. It was to manufacture the fear. He wrote a campaign that introduced the concept of offensive body odor as a source of social rejection. Something that could end friendships, destroy romantic prospects, and mark a person as unacceptably unclean without their knowledge. The campaign produced a public outcry. Women wrote angry letters to the magazine that ran it, accusing it of indecency. Odorono's sales increased by 112% in the first year. The fear had been installed, and with it, the only available relief, the product that addressed the fear the product's manufacturer had created. This is the foundational template of modern advertising. Not, here is something you might want, but here is something you should be afraid of, and here is what will protect you from it. The fear of aging, the fear of social rejection, the fear of financial failure, the fear of physical inadequacy. None of these fears are natural in the sense of being discovered independently by individuals through lived experience. All of them were identified, amplified, and in many cases manufactured by industries whose revenue depends on the ongoing presence of the fear. You cannot sell anti-aging products to people who are not afraid of aging. You cannot sell social anxiety remedies to people who are not socially anxious. The product requires the fear. The fear requires maintenance. The maintenance is the marketing. In 2014, a former producer at a major American cable news network gave a documented account of the editorial decisions made during his tenure. He described a systematic policy, not written down, but operationally consistent, of prioritizing fear-based stories over neutral or positive ones. The internal data was unambiguous. Fear-based headlines produced engagement rates 3 to 4 times higher than neutral headlines covering identical events. Threat framing, the presentation of events as dangers to the viewer's safety, livelihood, family, or identity, produced longer watch times, more return visits, and significantly higher advertising revenue. The news was not reporting fear. The news was producing fear, and then selling advertising to the companies whose products promised relief from the fear the news had just generated. The loop is closed. The viewer is the product. Their fear is the inventory. The same mechanism operates in intimate relationships, and this is where it becomes most difficult to see, because it is most difficult to believe about someone you love. The tactic is called manufactured insecurity. It operates as follows. A partner, consciously or unconsciously, introduces doubt about the target's value, attractiveness, competence, or lovability. Small comments, comparative observations, moments of withdrawal that seem to respond to the target's independent behavior. The target begins to feel an anxiety they did not feel before the relationship. They begin to work harder to maintain the partner's approval. They become less willing to challenge the partner, less willing to assert their own needs, less willing to leave. Because leaving would mean exposure to the fear of being unlovable, of being alone, of having their worst beliefs about themselves confirmed. The partner has become the protection from a fear the partner installed. This is the intimate version of the protection racket. It is also, the research on coercive control shows, one of the most common and least recognized forms of relationship abuse. Here is the neuroscience that makes all three versions of this mechanism work. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, processes fear signals before the prefrontal cortex has the opportunity to evaluate them rationally. Fear arrives in the body before it arrives in the mind. By the time you are consciously aware of being afraid, your body has already begun preparing for threat response. Heart rate elevated, attention narrowed, non-essential cognitive functions suppressed, including, crucially, the functions responsible for critical evaluation of the source of the fear. A frightened brain is not a skeptical brain. A frightened brain is a compliant brain. It will accept almost any offered protection, without subjecting that protection to the scrutiny it would apply in a calmer state. This is not a weakness of character. This is the operational result of a nervous system, designed for predators on the savannah being exploited by systems that have had centuries to identify and weaponize its vulnerabilities. Here is how to see the protection racket operating in your own life. Ask 3 questions about every fear you carry. Question 1, who benefits from this fear? Not who claims to protect you from it, who benefits from you having it. If a fear reliably produces a behavior that generates revenue, compliance, or control for an identifiable party, that fear has a manufacturer. Find the manufacturer. Question 2, when did this fear arrive? Not when you first felt it. When did the framework for it appear in your environment? Fears that feel ancient and personal often have surprisingly recent and external origins. The fear of not being productive enough as a source of self-worth did not exist before industrialization. The fear of your body being wrong did not exist before the industries that sell body correction. The fear of being left behind did not exist in its current form before social media created a real-time display of everyone else's apparent progress. Age your fear. Find out when it was born. That date will tell you something important about where it came from. Question 3, what does the fear prevent you from doing? Not what does it protect you from, what does it prevent? Fear that is genuinely protective prevents you from walking into traffic. It responds to actual, present, physical danger. Fear that is manufactured prevents you from something else entirely. It prevents you from questioning the system that installed it, from leaving the relationship that depends on your insecurity, from consuming less of the product that promises relief, from voting against the party that has positioned itself as your only protection, from existing comfortably in your own body without purchasing the correction. The fear that prevents you from questioning its source is not protecting you. It is protecting the source. The most important act of psychological self-determination available to you is not the elimination of fear. Fear is real. Some of it is necessary. Some of it is accurate. The most important act is the audit. Sit with each fear you carry and ask, did I find this or was I given it? Is it pointing at something real or at something that becomes real only if I believe it? Who am I when this fear is not running me? That person, the one who exists in the absence of the installed fear, is the person you were before the protection racket found you. They are still there, underneath the fear that was built around them.